Hey guys, you here, aka Gene. The results are finally in for top 10 fastest sports cars on GTA 5 on the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. I personally feel like quite a few things have changed with the car's response and how they feel. I feel like the cars don't tend to rear end as much as they used to on the PlayStation 3. Maybe because I've improved my driving, or it's something to do with the game mechanics. It must be a placebo, I don't know. But I've been running these tests for a while now, ever since the game's been out. And I've selected 2 tracks for testing, and the reason for that is because, as you know, GTA 5 mechanics are slightly broken when it comes to going over curbs, bumps and potholes. Certain cars tend to receive an advantage over another, and this provides inaccurate results. And therefore I wanted to keep it as fair as possible and provide the most accurate results for optimal lap times. So the reason for the 2 tracks is because this track in particular that you're watching now is made by one of the guys in Apex Talkers from that crew. You know, this provides the least variables when it comes to bumps, potholes and curbs, whereas the other track that I've personally created myself called Komodo Grand Prix, as you may have seen in the Car v Car episodes, and that track's got a lot of variables, a lot of curbs, a lot of bumps, a lot of potholes. So you guys will see an immense difference in the results for the top 10 for this particular track and that track that I've selected. And of course, lap times are extremely track dependent. You know, certain cars benefit from certain tracks over another. You know, some cars do require certain straights to really optimize lap times, rather than certain cars which oversteer more and have a better turning circle, you know, benefit on smaller tracks with a lot of corners. So you got to really sort of consider that as well. Here's the thing also, is that basically I've been running these tests with high-end tires. So high-end tires provide the most natural result, in my opinion, when it comes to the car mechanics, rather than off-road tires, because what off-road tires do, to provide the additional exploited traction which should not be there in the first place. However, what the off-road tires do is they provide the optimal lap times, the absolute limit for each track. So if you guys are interested in seeing optimal lap times with the cars, then you should check out Brofi's channel. There's a link in the description for the top fastest sports cars, so you guys just can check out that with off-road tires. But I'm going to say this one more last time, is that all my tests that I'm going to be covering on the PS4 and Xbox One will all be done with high-end tires. So hopefully you guys understand. But I'm trying to gather the most natural results from each of these cars provided by the car mechanics, rather than an external factor which provides additional traction that should not be there in the first place from the broken game mechanics. So here are the results for Galileo Grand Prix, one of the sickest F1 style tracks. And this is one of the tracks that actually inspired me to create my MLG Zoo King playlist based around Rockford, where I restricted the tracks to make sure everybody is forced onto the roads rather than abusing the curbs and going on payments and killing innocent civilians without paying for life insurance. So in the 9th spot we have the Comet, but as you saw, at the 10th spot we have the Banshee, right? But that was 1.1 seconds behind the Comet, and that's crazy. There's such a huge gap from the 10th to 9th spot. But what you see later on in the rest of the list, that the gap from milliseconds becomes so close to each other, is absolutely ridiculous. The Comet is actually really good. From this testing, I found that there's a lot of other sports cars that are viable for racing also, and you guys should certainly give it a go. So anything within this top 10, you guys should certainly try it, because it can keep up with the top as well. It's all to do with the driving style and what your car you're comfortable with and used to. But obviously these cars do require a little bit more than the top cars when it comes to paying attention to, because they don't have as much traction as the top cars when it comes to carrying the speed efficiently around the corner without making mistakes. And certain cars do have a higher rate of making the mistakes than others. For example, just here, you can hardly make a mistake with this car because it's got insane traction. However, you sort of forcing you to do a particular sort of driving style, which is kind of weird for certain people, especially myself, because I'm used to approaching corners as wide as possible, as closest to the sidewalk before I approach the corner and exiting. Right, that's the logical way of approaching it. But with this car, it's a completely different driving style. You need to really sort of optimize the brakes to generate the power through the corner. But when you actually approach the corner, you have to approach it as tight as possible, so you actually exit out as quickly as possible. But that's just the way this car works. You know, this is one of those unique cars which actually has that sort of style, which is actually quite annoying to get used to, and I personally don't like it because it doesn't feel natural for racing at all whatsoever. Remember guys, that's just my personal opinion. I'm not saying that this car should not be used in racing. Don't use it. You guys can of course use it if you want, right? That's up to you. If this is something that suits your driving style, then go for it. If you're comfortable with it, then go for it. I'm not judging you. I'm not going to sit there complaining. All right, this is just not for my driving style, but it's still a great car and it's absolutely efficient. And by the way, just in case you guys, there's a lot of people wondering in the comment section of these videos, how am I level 594? How do I have 30 mil consistently all the time? Well, I do manage my money well. I'm not the type of person that'll come on free roam spending a bunch of money on clothes and purchasing weapons and constantly buying cars. Well, actually, I do constantly buy cars, but that's for testing purposes only. But the thing is, when I do purchase these cars, I do end up getting the money back through testing. As you can see, each time I tested these cars, I managed to get 30,000 whenever players were in the lobby. Or by myself, I get 8,400 every time I do it. Obviously, I do multiple testing, so I do end up getting a lot of money back from the cars that I purchase and just end up meeting a margin of profit. So that's just the way it works, man. You end up just not even paying attention to the money you get. If you actually enjoy the game, if you actually enjoy the racing in the game, instead of complaining about it and saying it's not a racing game, then you're obviously going to make a lot of money out of it and a lot of levels out of it. And that's just the way the game works. If you do enjoy it, then by all means play it. You know, you can even enjoy golf, and you can enjoy, I don't know, bowling. If there's, I don't even know if there's bowling in the game. Fuck it, awkward. If there's fucking tennis, you know, you play tennis, you know, you play that competitively. You can even do team death matches, seriously. I don't give a fuck. I'll respect that, you know. If that's something you like in this game, do it. Well, if you're making money and levels out of it, great. That's all that matters. People enjoy it. If you're having fun, I respect that. Now, with that being said, we have the Massacre in 7th position, the normal Massacre, which is crazy. The normal Massacre in 7th position. Are you serious? Well, of course, it's a lot to do with the track. But this track consists of a lot of corners and a lot of speed carrying as well. And of course, having to generate the power of this car is quite difficult with this poor turning circle. So having to brake early as well. And of course, having to turn that car, you're losing speed every single corner, which obviously comes down to milliseconds at the end of the day. So 1 minute 26.454, which is about 0.2 seconds ahead of the Jester. But still not enough to actually make it into the top 5 spots on this particular track. Anyway, whenever I try to push with this car, obviously you have to be patient with it because of the way the car mechanics work. But when having to carry the optimal speed around this corner, for some reason I still can't break the 125s, whereas the race car version does. Of course, the race car version's got better traction than this car, so that's understandable with its turning capabilities with that particular version. But at the 6th spot, man, we have the Serrano. Alright, this actually freaking smacked me in the face. I did not expect this from this car, but then it's understandable at the same time. This car does tend to oversteer quite a bit, but because they're flat out roads here, there's hardly any bumps and nothing to really sort of interfere with the car's turning. It's going to take it smoothly, so the rear won't stick out as much because there's no bumps. There's none of that going to affect it. The variables are not there. So with no variables, this car seems to be quicker than the normal Massacre, along with the Jester and other cars previously in this list. So this is actually ever so slightly quicker than the Massacre, the normal version. 0.002 seconds, right? Remember, 0.002, so don't think that it's just a huge exaggeration. Of course, what this is saying is that this is going to keep up with the Massacre on these sort of tracks, on these sort of roads, depending on how many straights there are. But the thing about this car on straights is that it's so good because it's got an amazing top speed, right? When it hits the final gear, it's going to shoot off, alright? It's going to shoot off. This car does have a nice turning circle. It also, only downside you could say is that it completely wants to stick to the ground. So if you are trying to force it to turn too much, you can oversteer. And sometimes the oversteer can be unpredictable. But once you figure the car out, oh boy, it's quick. It's actually certainly viable in competitive racing. And I'm certainly saying you can give it a go, man. Even myself, you know, I was trying to break the 125s with this car. But I know a guy that could, and he can potentially do it. And this car is certainly worth it. And that guy managed to get a 126.1 with this car on this track. Whereas obviously it's still with the driver, but I personally only managed to pull off that particular time. But still not quicker than the Obey 9F though, even though the guy got 126.1. Obey 9F on the other hand can get 125, depending on, once again, on the driver. Myself personally got 126.020. Quite a significant gap between 4th and 5th, but 0.4. As you can see, this is actually a really good car. Once again, I personally feel like this is slightly more predictable than the Serrano, although it does tend to oversteer more if you are willing to risk it. But then you obviously know that you're going to risk it, so you should expect the oversteer. Whereas the Serrano is unpredictable. You know, there's certain points where if you get the braking point wrong while you're turning, you're going to completely screw up. Whereas with this car, you can sort of tuck it in every single corner. But the speed carry is amazing because the acceleration with this car is ridiculously amazing. You just generate so much speed through the corners that the turning circle's there to help you out. But there is a slight tendency to understeer at the same time. So this car does require a lot of that management to really optimize it every single lap. You know, the thing about this car is not consistent because of the randomness provided through the sort of speed carry. You know, sometimes you'd have to sacrifice a little bit of that speed because you're understeering too much, but then you'd also have to manage to oversteer if you're trying to also turn too much around that corner. So this is a great lap time, by the way. 126.020 is a really quick lap time that I managed to pull off. Just got to keep it calm and steady with this car and not do that and hit the railings like that. But it was decent. It was decent. But at the 4th spot, we have, of course, going into the top spot, just a race car. This one, once again, I still somehow sort of struggled to pull off this lap time. Like I said, it's not the most consistent for 125s, but it's still doable. 125.884 is what I managed to get. But this is one of those cars that takes advantage of all the bumps, all the curbs, anything. This car just generates so much speed through that. It's ridiculous. Look, and what's weird is that out of all the laps I've done, even hitting that little thing on the apex, right, a little dynamic prop, managed to pull off this time, which makes no sense. A little bit of jitter on this car, right, for some reason get to the actual little speed boost, something that sort of shakes this car. If you give this car a vibrator, this car will probably go 1 second quicker. That's how much of a responsiveness this car you know, is. It responds to any prevailing wind. It's ridiculous. This car is fucking stupid. It's like a robot, you know. It's not a car, you know. It's not, for me, it's not a car. It's not a car for me, man. It's weird. Like, for racing, it feels like some fat motherfuckers in your way, because this guy just does not want to lose control. It's so efficient. The acceleration says, fuck you. You stay behind me because I've got a nice fat ass. Okay, it will just keep going. This guy will keep going. The traction is there. Absolutely efficient. It's a good car, but that, for me personally, it's a bad car as well. It's one of those things that you either like it or you don't, but it still works out. It helps you, and it wants to help you, and it wants to stay with you by your side while you sleep at night and stare at you, which is weird. But fuck that car, man. Fuck you. Sorry, that's just my opinion. So, at 3rd spot, we have the Massacre race car. Look at the difference between the normal version and this version. 0.8 seconds, which is kind of ridiculous considering this only got a tiny amount of traction improvement compared to the other one. But it makes such a huge difference on tracks like this with a bunch of corners. And you can see how much of a difference just from this video. So, taking the corners is so much easier. And you can also brake late as well into the corners. So, you can generate the power quicker through the exits, because you're immediately hitting the apex right as possible, like quickly as possible. Sorry, the hell am I saying, man? The more you get into these commentaries, the more you talk and sound so weird. Fuck you guys, man. Fuck you. So anyway, Massacre, right? The thing about this car, right, is a bit distracting at first, but once you get used to it, it feels great. I mean, it is so efficient as well, because the thing about this car is that although it's got improved traction, there is a slight tendency for the rear to stick out, but it just sticks onto the ground as you take these corners. You can sort of just throw it into every corner. It just slides in nicely. You know, you just know it won't spin out on you. And the understeer isn't as heavy as it is with the normal version of the Massacre, so you can feel more confident when taking these corners and carrying with that extra speed, which this car allows. It's got that slightly better turning circle as well, ever so slightly, which makes such a huge difference. 0.8 seconds, that's such a huge difference on these sort of tracks. That's why this car is so much better than the normal Massacre, in my opinion anyway, because you have that confidence to use it and abuse it, just whack it. So 2nd spot, it's just ever so slightly quicker than the race car version. You have the Felter. As you know, you have to consider also that, you know, this track's got a lot of corners, and think about the Felter, it's got amazing traction and turning circle to carry the speed. It's not necessarily the quickest out of corners when it generates the power, but the thing about this car is that it carries that hella speed through the corners. Alright, and it's easy also to take the corners as well. So, like, it's not responsive, but it's extremely efficient. It feels so smooth, man. The corners that you take with this car is so smooth. You just got to do it right. You got to take the right lines. Otherwise, you can screw up. You know, people do tend to be afraid of this car when you oversteer, because, oh, if you oversteer with this car, man, this motherfucker will just bite you, man. Because the recovery rate on this car is a bit poor, especially you know, because it's got such a fat rear and it's quite heavy. Obviously, when you oversteer, having to recover from that, you're gonna lose out so much speed. So let's say you're in such a consistent spree and you make a mistake, you know, it takes a long time for you to come back onto the track and to generate that speed again, to optimize that particular lap you're trying to do and to keep consistent at. So that's what you have to take into consideration, because this car is heavy, but it's so nimble at the same time that you can actually do this sort of cornering and carry this optimal speed at the same time. It's so smooth, it feels so comfortable. It's really a nice car, and personally it suits my driving style, but it's one of those things, and it's really down to preference, but it's certainly an efficient car if you know how to use it. But hey, in number 1 spot we have the free car here. We have the Energy out of nowhere. How you doing, mate? This car is actually wow, it's a funny car actually, because there's a lot of debates about this car. There's still to this day, there's a lot of opinions stated on this car. But a little funny story, a little background check. First of all, I made a video ages ago, okay, last year, right? I think 8-9 months ago, stating that this car was overpowered. I was literally crying at a point where, what the fuck was Rockstar thinking? And the reason for that, right, is because this car is so consistent. At points, I feel like this car is driving for you instead of you just, you know, using your fingers to drive. First of all, GTA 5 mechanics, there's not much required on this game. To be honest, it's one of the most simplest games out there, but there's a lot of freedom for you to optimize. So there's certain people out there who will take advantage of the cars and really be consistent with it. And that's one of these cars. That is this car right here. This car is so damn consistent. It's unreal. You can hardly make a mistake once you get used to the first lap. It's like instant muscle memory, right? It's like when you go to the gym for 5 years straight and you stop for 1 year and then you go back the next year. It's instantaneous. You just grasp it right away, and that's it. You consistently keep going again without being lazy. That's this car, man. Right? It's one of those things. Well, let me tell you a story about this car, all right? I was doing a test with this. I only had to do this one time. I don't have to do this multiple times, all right? It's not like I struggle with this or anything. I personally hate the driving style of the car as well. But for 5 laps straight on that particular testing on this footage, I was getting low 125s with ease. That's the worst part about it, with ease. And that scares me because it's a free car. And it's so damn predictable. That's the thing about it. It's so predictable that you can just be so comfortable with it. But it's all to do with the driving style. I personally hate the driving style, of course. But the car seems to be just doing a job for me anyway. But anyway, hopefully you guys found this video useful. If you guys did, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more GTA 5 testing and car testing for other vehicles and car classes. Expect to see that in upcoming videos and more cars comparing and updating you guys with the cars I've already done and whatnot. So yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Check your son out. Good night, peace. Yeah. Hikashi here, aka Gene. Welcome to GTA 5 Top 5 episodes, to Top 5 drifts on GTA 5 Racing. This right here, the bonus clip you saw, synchronized drifting with me and Picano.